All right, so we're going to continue on with War in the Pacific, and we're going to get to the end of the war. Okay, so we talk about the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. These are the last two major battles of the War in the Pacific. Okay, so now at this point, the United States and Japan have been battling over common territory, specifically in the Pacific Ocean. Okay, at this point, we have pushed Japan back to Japanese territories. Okay, so this point right here, this is the first time that the Japanese were fighting for land that was already part of Japan. Okay, so they were very motivated in these battles. The Japanese refused to surrender. Okay, they had systems of kind of these underground mazes that kind of protect them from the bombings, and it was very hard to get Japan to surrender at this point. Okay, so again, major points. You don't really need to write it down again, but know with Iwo Jima, the Japanese troops refused to surrender as America is invading that territory. Okay, so you see right here, right on the outskirts of actual Japan, this is owned by Japan. On Okinawa, this was very important for the Japanese because if we got to Okinawa right here on the map, we would be able to easily launch an invasion into Japan. So again, like I mentioned earlier, the Japanese are using a system of tunnels to avoid bombing. Okay, if you look over here, it was a mass amount of Japanese dying at this point, but again, they refused to surrender their land. Again, you can write this down if you're interested in using him for one of your figures, but get this point in blue. You don't need to know graduated West Point or helped with the invasion of North Africa. He's most notably going to help plan and lead the invasion of Normandy at D-Day. Douglas MacArthur was a leader of the forces in the Pacific Ocean, specifically in the Philippines. So remember, we already had control over the Philippines. We talked about that with imperialism, exercising our sphere of influence. Okay, the Japanese had also had interest in the Philippines and had taken over at one point. Okay, so the Bataan Death March, the Japanese are killing American prisoners of war after MacArthur is forced to leave. Okay, so Battle of Leyte Gulf, MacArthur comes back to basically take over the Philippines. Okay, so basically you need to understand it's kind of this back and forth between the United States and Japan fighting over these territories in the Pacific. Okay, at this point when we're fighting in the Pacific, the Axis powers begin to fail in Europe. Okay, so if you get the little joke right here, you see Churchill holding up the peace sign. Hitler is doing his Nazi symbol, and it says scissors beats paper. All right, in looking at the war, okay, so the war is going to begin to end when the United States successfully invades in Italy. Okay, so if you look over here, remember we started the invasion in North Africa. When the Allied troops land in Sicily, Italy knows that they are going to fall. So Mussolini pretty much has to surrender Italy. Italy falls. That's one less Axis power that we have to worry about, okay? So fighting will continue for 2 more years before the other 2 Axis powers surrender. Okay, another example. You don't need to write this down, but Rome and Italy is liberated by these Allied soldiers. So kind of helping the people, treat them, because remember, even civilians are being attacked in this war. All right, VE Day. This is very important that you write this down. This stands for Victory Over Europe, okay? So Mussolini had tried to flee to Switzerland. Remember, Switzerland's neutral, right in the middle of all of the action, but he's caught and executed by his own people. Later that month, Hitler knows that Germany is getting ready to fall, so he is going to commit suicide. On May 7th, 1945, Germany officially surrenders, okay? Imagine that. Their leader is gone, this man that they looked up to and thought that he was going to fix everything. He commits suicide. Now their country is in turmoil. So Germany officially surrenders. So this stands for Victory in Europe Day. Okay. So the Allies accept unconditional surrender. So they don't get anything. They're going to do whatever we tell them to. They have to surrender. Okay. So at this point, FDR has already passed away, and Harry S. Truman has taken over as president. Okay, so again, we talked about FDR is in very poor health in the middle of his 4th term. Mussolini is killed by his own people. Remember, dictators not always taken so well by their people, and Hitler commits suicide. Alright, so meanwhile, in Japan, so at this point, Italy and Germany have surrendered, but Japan is still fighting. Okay, so you don't really need to write these down, but no, at this point in the war, we have virtually destroyed Japan's navy. Okay, so they are struggling, and we will continue doing island hopping, taking back our territories that we had interest in the Pacific, and eventually we hope to invade Japan. Now remember, at this point, Japan is not willing to surrender their territory, so they're putting up a hard fight at this point. Okay, now remember, flashback to what we talked about at the home front. With the Manhattan Project, we have worked on developing the atomic bomb. Okay, so again, just kind of keep that in mind as we go into events in the Pacific. All right, remember we talked about the plane Enola Gay. That is what's going to carry and drop the atomic bomb. Okay, so at this point, the country has to decide, and the country's leaders have to decide what to do about Japan. Okay, Japan was not surrendering at this point, and we were really stuck at how do we end this war. Okay, the first atomic bomb is going to be dropped on Hiroshima. Okay, big thing to know. I underlined it there for you. So just know, thousands are going to die of the immediate impact, okay? But radiation poisoning and cancer affect several generations after that. Oh no, the video won't work. I'll pull it up in class. Alright, and the second atomic bomb is going to be dropped on Nagasaki. Okay, again, same thing. Kind of understand, just you need to know where the two locations were. So you see mass destruction in the center where the bomb was going to be dropped. Okay, so mass devastation at this point. Okay, so if you look on your map, right here on the outskirts of Japan are where the two atomic bombs are going to be dropped. People are given warning that if they don't surrender, the atomic bombs are going to be dropped. They still not surrender. Truman is going to drop the atomic bomb on Japan. Okay, so Truman is kind of using this justification. You don't need to write this down, but this is kind of his justification. Okay, why did we decide to ultimately drop the atomic bomb? So basically he's justifying that if we continued with a land invasion, that too many American soldiers would die. So if you look at what he's saying right here, my fellow Americans, the British, Chinese, and United States governments have given the Japanese people adequate warning for what is in store for them. The world will know that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base. If Japan does not surrender, bombs will have to be dropped on the war industries, and unfortunately thousands of civilian lives will be lost. I urge Japanese civilians to leave industrial cities immediately and save themselves. Okay, so there's this understanding it's American lives or Japanese lives. Okay, does it justify it? I don't know, but that's kind of the argument that they're making. Okay, so even survivors had these very severe chemical burns, and radiation caused them to lose their hair, caused them to develop cancer for many generations on, deformities, things like that. Again, a headline from when the atomic bomb is dropped on Nagasaki. Alright, so remember, the Emperor Hirohito, the kind of puppet figure for Japan, surrenders to the United States after the second atomic bomb is dropped. Okay, so kind of get what's in red in the second point right here. So you see them when they're getting ready to surrender to the United States, and that's going to be known as VJ Day, or Victory in Japan. Okay, so you see that famous picture, so everybody's celebrating that World War II is finally over.